Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Rise Above the Ranks, brought to you by Estate Media. I am sitting here with my co-host James Harris, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that has deeply impacted and affected the whole of the Los Angeles community and beyond, and that is the Los Angeles wildfires.
From assisting with temporary housing to advocating for fire-resistant rebuilding practices, there are so many different ways that agents can now jump in and truly make a real difference. Today, we're going to jump in and explore the practical steps that we think that realtors can take to actually provide meaningful support, build goodwill, and help communities recover after such a tragedy.
It's an extremely important topic, so let's dive right into it. And let's take a moment to recap actually what's happened here. The Palisades fire, the Eaton fire, I know we were almost directly affected, and so many people that we know were affected in the most awful way. It's absolutely devastating. Thousands of homes were destroyed. Families displaced. Sadly, lives were lost as well. While the rain we've had has brought the fires under control, it's also potentially created new challenges like mudslides in the burnt areas. And it's already been a tough year for so many.
I don't think any of us expected anything like this to ever happen in our lifetime. And yet it's just happened on our doorstep over the last couple of weeks. And that's why I think we really feel that the conversation is so important. As realtors, we're not just selling homes. We're a part of these communities. We are in these communities every day, and we all know 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people that have quite literally lost everything. This is our chance to really step up and actually help people rebuild, whether that's through connecting them with resources or supporting fire-resistant building efforts, or simply just being a source of guidance and hope. This is our time to really stand out and speak up and help those affected. So we want to dive into some actionable ways that you can make a difference.
And I think, we'll start just between us speaking about the role, well, obviously us being real estate agents, the role that real estate agents have been playing in helping communities recover from the wildfires. James, let's just talk about what we've experienced and what our roles have been as realtors.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I feel like our job goes way beyond just placing somebody into a home. Mm-hmm. These are families. They have children. Those children go to school, and they're now at a place where they literally don't know what to do. And so as real estate agents right now, outside of finding people homes, you're starting to really see our community speak up about real estate taxes, about putting a hold on ULA, about building restrictions, what the city allow versus disallow, what the Coastal Commission allows versus disallows. And I really am proud of our community for speaking up and trying to actually make a difference beyond us just putting people in homes, leasing them and selling them. I think there's a lot more to it than just that right now.
And what do we see, when the wildfires were indeed going on? I mean, they were, at some point, we were evacuated. We were actually, so to speak, displaced. Thank God it was temporary. But I can only imagine, it kind of puts you in that mindset of imagining what if. You never think your house is going to burn down, right? It's the last thing you're going to think about when you buy a house. You have everything in there. You have your memories, you have your photographs, you have your ornaments, you have your every single thing. It's that safe space at the end of the day that you can go back to. And I know that you have been, and I question that at some point, right? When the fires are coming closer. Sadly, not everyone was as lucky as us. And let's talk a little bit about what you saw, what we saw, directly from clients and friends who lost their homes.
We've seen it all. I mean, we've literally seen it all. We have personal friends, single mothers that lost everything down to their dogs and cats and left in the morning thinking they'd go back in the afternoon. And by the time the mandatory evacuation happened, they weren't allowed home. And they lost pets, they lost dogs, they lost lifetime memories. They lost absolutely everything. I just can't even explain how devastating the whole experience has been. And not only that, now they've lost everything. It's like, what's next? And I just think as agents, we need to step up and help these people in any which way that we can. Insurance is a huge topic right now. Like what are you telling clients when it comes to insurance, how to handle it? It's hard because you want to give advice, but you also don't want to be an expert in every field. Like, what advice are you giving around insurance right now?
Well, the first thing I ask personally is, do you have an insurance agent? Most people do, because that's how hopefully they got their insurance anyway. Some people are on Fair Plan. Regardless whether you're on Fair Plan or if you do have the insurance, speak to an expert, right? And we work very closely with multiple insurance agents. And the first thing I say to them is, call this guy. Ask him the questions, because he is going to help you navigate this. Some of it's uncertain, some of it's going to take time, but speak to an expert. There's also attorneys that have reached out to us directly who can also help facilitate the process. But for me, it's always speak to an expert. We as realtors are here to help where we can, but also make the correct and necessary introductions to other experts who really do specialize in that field. And they are the insurance agents, they are the attorneys, and anything we can do by way of introduction and help, that's what we're here for. That's our job.
How many people have you spoken to that realized how underinsured they were? So many people in this fire, their policies were removed from underneath them literally 8 weeks ago. That's how insane this whole situation is. Others had replacement value costs that couldn't even build a third of their house today. And it's truly insane. I mean, we are hearing every different scenario under the sun. And it's going to be a learning curve for everybody. And I got to imagine the insurance companies are just slammed to the wall with calls coming in. But yes, like Dave said, don't try and be the expert. Advise your clients to call their insurance agencies, their insurance brokers, and get the help that they need. Dave, what are proactive steps that you're taking that can take to identify housing opportunities now for families that have been displaced by the fires?
Got to make calls at the end of the day. You know, properties that are on for lease are having still 20 offers plus, right?
Do you think that's calming down? I'm seeing
it has calmed down a bit, but it's like then the leasing inventory has been depleted, right?
It was nuts, though.
Yeah, I mean, we had a listing that literally was quiet, and then suddenly one day 20 offers. But I think as a realtor, for families and clients and friends and anyone that's been displaced that come to you for help or come to us for help, it's our job to pick up the phone and actually proactively put ourselves in
their shoes.
Yeah, it's like, one thing is like, okay, we'll send you what's on the market. We'll do that anyway. We have a list of pockets, but what our team's been doing is we have a list of leases available, all of them for each area, whether they're on market, off market, whether we've called the client directly and said to them, will you be interested in leasing? We're providing that to our clients. But at the end of the day, we have to advocate for them, because the worst part is that you have 20 offers on a property, or there's 20 offers on a property. You're representing your client. The problem is all the other 19 families have also been displaced. That's the worst part. So for every lucky person or luckier person that gets that house, 19 or 20 or more other people have lost out, and they got nowhere to go. And that for me is the hardest part to comprehend, because to be displaced, lose your possessions, but really then have to deal with a bidding war effectively just to find somewhere that you wouldn't ordinarily even want to be in, because you got to put a roof over your family's head and get back to a degree of normality. It's very hard.
And what's your take on all the different opinions going around right now about the Palisades. I can't really speak to the
Yeah, I
Eaton
mean,
fire because
yeah.
it's a market that we're not 100% familiar with, but I'm hearing so many different opinions going around about the Palisades. You know, I've heard people are coming back, they're going to rebuild, they're Palisadians, they'll never leave, to no, 50, 60% of the people that lived in the Palisades are not going to rebuild. They're going to go out and buy a new house and not rebuild. I have my own opinion on that, but like, what's your take in your words of what's going to happen there? Obviously, we don't know, but in your opinion.
I mean, it's TBD. Let's be honest. But I mean, putting myself in the shoes of somebody that lost their house, that now they have to wait for the environmental cleanup, which is a big deal, by the way.
Huge deal.
Yeah, this is like asbestos. This is not. We were talking to someone yesterday, and he was speaking to an environmental cleanup company for Brentwood. He had smoke damage, right? Not even, in the Palisades. And they were saying, this is not a forest wildfire. Mm-hmm. This is an urban wildfire. Do you realize how many toxins, and from asbestos to lead to everything that's in the air, and how delicate this cleanup needs to be? So putting myself in a homeowner's position that's lost their home, the environmental cleanup, then maybe I'm underinsured. Then I don't build. That's not what I do, right? I have a job. The last thing I want to do is start building a house or rebuilding a house, dealing with the city, dealing with architects, plans, permits, expediters, general contractors, all the contractors, the subcontractors who are going to be completely in demand, because this is not I'm building a house on my street. This is I'm building a house on my street where there's other houses being built in a town where there's infrastructure issues and thousands of houses that need to be rebuilt. I don't really want to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So I think, I could be wrong, but logically, I think there's going to be a lot of land sales, unfortunately. And it breaks my heart, because think about the memories that, like you call them, Palisadians had, that have been there, that have grown up there. Some have been there all their lives. Some have been there, they're too old to rebuild, right? They have no choice. Unfortunately, they're just memories now. And they're going to be, not because they want to be, but I think they're going to be forced to move on. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
No, I agree.
It's hard to say for sure.
I think my take is, if you're 65 and over, you're probably not rebuilding. I mean, the work it takes to rebuild and the time it takes to rebuild, I just think a lot of those people will likely say, I'm going to go and buy a house and not deal with a headache. Then I think there's those that have children, like myself, a 15-year-old, for example, that by the time my home was built, my child's off in college. So do I even want that lifestyle anymore? And then there's just going to be those families that realize that once they pick up the phone and call a contractor, how much it costs to rebuild and how long it takes. It's not like you pick up the phone and say, build my house. There's civils, there's structurals, there's architects, GCs, designers. It's a lot of work. My hope is that people do rebuild and they stay the course and they can afford to hold, because ultimately, I personally believe, with Rick Caruso behind the Palisades and all of the powers that be behind the scenes, I believe there's a very robust plan in place to make the Palisades absolutely incredible, albeit it will take time. But if I'm a guessing person, I say the Palisades becomes like one of the biggest and best members clubs in LA that you don't pay a membership fee for. You just have to be there to be a part of it. And they're going to rebuild community. And so I think if you can afford to hold, my advice would be hold. And if you can't for whatever reasons, then you have to start looking at different options. What ways, Dave, can real estate professionals rebuild trust and community spirit in neighborhoods recovering from these disasters? Like, how do you get those residents to start trusting again?
It's going to take time. I think time.
They're angry.
It's not about us giving, there's nothing we can say to someone that's lost their home. It's a grieving process they're going to have to go through, right?
But there's so much blame. I mean, the reservoir, no water. Hydrants, no water.
Let's hope that this is a very expensive lesson, not just financially, emotionally. Lives have been lost. Let's hope that there's change, which there will be, because
power lines need to go underground.
It's forced change. Rick Caruso was actually talking about that, burying power lines underground, using more fire-proof materials for the rebuild. Like, making sure there's great funding for the fire department, making sure the hydrants have water, make sure there's more hydrants, make sure the reservoirs are full. I think these are all factors that come into play, and unfortunately, it's just been a really horrible way to force that into play. Politics aside, this is reality now.
But I think it is politics.
But this can't happen again. That's what I mean. It can't happen again. There's no excuse for it happening already, and there's definitely no excuse for it happening again.
How can we as realtors advocate and have a louder voice for things like fire-resistant building practices or community preparedness programs so that we can help mitigate these risks in the future?
And there's been a lot of voice from the realtors, and I think that there's many factors like ULA should definitely, in my opinion, be taken away at the very least for people who have lost their homes that are now forced to sell their land at a loss. The last thing they're going to do is pay ULA on top of that. Anything from, I mean, they've already got the price gouging situation that they've put into temporary effect. What else was there?
But what about fire-resistant building
Fire-resistant buildings, a big deal.
Get to know your like. What do you recommend?
And also,
how can we have that voice? To push this along.
And also, the code. I know that on a federal level, the Coastal Commission's already been pushed to the side because that takes a long time. Hopefully, they'll do that on a local level as well, on a state level. Anything that can make the rebuild less painful, more painless than it already is. All the blockades of the bureaucracy, the red tape, the costs, if they can eliminate as much of those as possible, even city inspectors being replaced by professionals, because they're going to be overwhelmed. You call for an inspection now, no offense if I'm building a house, right? You're going to be waiting a long time, with the exception of Beverly Hills, which is incredible, by the way. You're going to be waiting a long time just for an inspection. Now imagine that someone's building and they need to have their foundation inspected to clear to frame, right? Good luck. So they're already talking about, outsourcing that to professionals. And I think just to summarize, just to put an umbrella over it, anything that can make the rebuild process more efficient and less painful should be adopted by the city officials. And us as realtors have already been very proactive about voicing those concerns and those suggestions.
And I think whether you love Trump or hate him, I think Trump did a phenomenal job speaking publicly about the federal government supporting in any which way they can to assist in the rebuild of the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. Having said that, we could talk about this obviously for hours. And I'm sure we will do more segments around the wildfires as things develop. But we will be wrapping up this episode now of Rise Above the Ranks. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to everybody for tuning in and listening or watching on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts. Be sure to go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow for more from Rise Above the Ranks and Estate Media. And leave us a comment with who you'd like to see on future episodes. Thanks for listening. And see you on the next one.